It's 4:30, call the meeting to order. Acknowledge that the District of Tofino operates within the territory of the Tla-o-qui-aht First Nation, Tla-o-qui-aht. Notice to attendees, the meeting is being video recorded and will be published in the District of Tofino channel. Notice to virtual attendees to sign up for public comment question periods in the Q&amp function Zoom. The registered participants are required to enter their full name, residential address, and the agenda item they wish to speak. The unanimous consent, if there are no objections, I move that pursuant to section 11(1), proceeding violence moving to 2/9/2016, the temporary facility provided for the public watch committee October 2022. October 22, 2024, regular council meeting is to be held in a multi-purpose room at Tofino Community Hall located at 351 Net Road in Tofino C. And the meeting is to be held electronically via Zoom and live broadcast via the District of Tofino. Seeing no objection, motion carried. Also, through unanimous consent, to move that the October 2024 regular council agenda is adopted. No objection, that motion is carried. The consent agenda. There are no requests to move in the consent agenda, then I will move also through unanimous consent that item 4.1 to 4.2, the consent agenda and regular council meeting held October 22, 2024 be approved and received. Seeing no objection, that motion is carried. Mayor's reports. Well, we had the provincial election, though we don't know the results of the final overall election. We do know that Josie Osborne will be returning as our MLA winning her seat. And just want to commend her. And I'm so thankful for her commitment and hard work that she has shown to not only Tofino but the whole region. And it's going to be a pleasure having you back, Victoria. Just a update on houses. I know that Louis Frank Sr. is in the hospital. Just wanted to acknowledge that I've known Louis for many years. He is a giant of a man in the houses in the community. His tremendous love and wisdom and patience and guidance has blessed countless generations of not only housing residents and members, but also visitors. And hearts go out to his family, his friends, and all the housing and Hempel members. Public comment on agenda items. Mr. Paul.
Thank you, Mayor Law. I will now do an open call for all members of the public in the gallery and online. We do have one person signed up for comment. But before I do so, I'll do an open call, going once, going twice, going 3 times. We have a Samantha Hackett. And a reminder to Ms. Hackett that you have 2 minutes to speak. And please state your name, your address, and the agenda, your item you're speaking to.
Thank you. Hello, Mayor and Council, staff. My name is Samantha Hackett, 700 Ocean Park Drive. I'm here as the Executive Director of Long Beach Chamber of Commerce. I'd like to address item 10.3, which is regarding the proposed business license regulation amendment and fee increases. In this case, the Chamber hasn't had sufficient time, I'll be honest, to discuss this thoroughly with staff or our local business community and to really contribute meaningfully to this discussion, but wanted to contribute a few comments in this short time. We, of course, understand the need for regular fee adjustments. It's very important to distinguish between what we think is a reasonable increase and those that can impose an undue burden on our businesses. So for instance, for a 1 to 2% increase, applying that in perpetuity might be acceptable to cover cost increases such as staff, but for a 3% increase, we believe it requires a further discussion. As part of our last minute review that we undertook for tonight's meeting, we noticed that the business license fees in other communities such as Nanaimo are 165, Port Alberni 132. They're considerably lower and what is being considered here. And Hewlett is 177 plus an amount for accommodations per unit, and even in Whistler, it's at 190 plus a per unit fee. Our local businesses, as you all know, are already adjusting to the recent significant increases in their utility rates, and additional increases in costs further strains them. In the newly released strategic plan, there was a highlight that I quote says about strong, creative and entrepreneurial spirit that defines Tofino, which we absolutely agree. And this is vital that we do not stifle this energy or discourage businesses from operating openly and proudly within our community by imposing excessive financial pressure and procedures. I just want to, on behalf of the chamber today, offer my collaboration with the district to work together to establish a business license process that supports our business community, providing value and fostering long-term economic stability. I have a lot of ideas to strengthen both the process and the business community overall. And by supporting and uplifting our businesses who not only are vital to our economy, but also the residents of the community, we can ensure Tofino thrives. Thank you.
I didn't have a timer. I got it. I was sort of right. Thank you.
No questions at this time or comments.
Okay,
Thank you.
super. Thank you. Moving on to correspondence, item 9.1, we have Mr. Housing regarding UPCN. Comments from council. We already discussed the meeting for, I think we brought it up. Each housing at the time, I'm very thankful for the support they've shown to not only continue with all the small communities and large communities. Moving on, 9.2. Oh yes, F. Suma regarding demande de partenariat pour une numération. Comes from council. I actually believe this was, did you get a comment?
Well, I thought that this was kind of interesting, and I didn't know how labor intensive this would be for staff to do something like this. The twin, I guess it is. But I thought it was a great opportunity for our community to be a role model for another community.
I believe Councillor Sawyer had much to say about this and did request this on this. So I'm wondering, since she is not here, if we can bump this to a future meeting so that Councillor Sawyer comes to say. Is that something we can do, Ms. Etienne?
Thank you, Mayor Law. This would be a discussion for all of council, and since a quorum of council is here, it can be discussed to see if there's interest to refer this to staff. If council would like to wait for Councillor Sawyer, we could put it on another agenda, but it is a full council decision.
Sure. Just kind of a chance to speak to her request. But I'll look to council. It has it could have merit. It's certainly interesting. And maybe perhaps a question for staff. Has this happened before, or you better request it this week?
Not that I'm aware of, not during my time that I recall, and I don't know what how onerous this task would be. If council does choose to refer it, like answer in terms of timing that it will take, but it's something that we can certainly add to our list.
Staff or council, any other councillors have a comment for this request? No, not this time. Okay, well, I think there's probably another way to go about it too. We can start a correspondence and maybe that can come from myself or and then we'll maybe explore it that way. And if we want to bring it back, perhaps we'll do it.
Sounds good.
Is that okay?
Yes.
Interim measure?
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Make a note on that. Moving on. 10.1, acting mayor schedule. Mr. Paul.
Thank you, Mayor Law. No formal presentation from staff this evening, but I can speak to both 10.1 and 10.2. These are the upcoming 2025 acting mayor schedules and council calendar schedules. Typically when staff create these schedules, the model that we follow is a council meeting on the second and fourth Tuesday of every month. With some exceptions, with some months with only one meeting. We do make provisions to avoid council meetings directly after holiday Mondays. And then we have a committee of the whole meeting every 2 to 3 council meetings. So that's the structure that we follow. But it's council's calendar and council's acting mayor schedule. So it's at the authorization of council to make any amendments or suggestions.
Super. Thank you. So I'll just open it up to council. Does anybody object to this? Anybody have any specific requests that relate to changes? No? I'm personally happy with the acting mayor schedule and the council calendar. So if there's no objections from council, then we can go ahead with the recommendations.
I'll move that the 2025 acting mayor schedule be adopted.
Councillor Thomas, second by Councillor Thomas, any other comments? All in favor? None opposed, motion carried.
I'll move that the 2025 council calendar be adopted.
Thomas. You got a race to get. Any comments? No, all in favor? None opposed, motion carried. Moving on. To item 10.3, business license regulation amendment bylaw.
So through the chair, my name is Kira Tak. I'm the bylaw services supervisor for the District of Tofino, here to present the business license regulation and amendment bylaw number 1239.02 2024. Okay, so the current business license regulation bylaw was adopted in 2022 to replace the business license bylaw number 858, which was adopted in 2000. Schedule A of bylaw number 1239 establishes bylaw fees for the years from 2022 to 2024. Business license fees increased by 20% for the year 2023 and continue to increase by 2% in 2024. The intent was that fees would continue to increase by 2% annually. And at present, business license fees are not identified beyond 2024. The proposed fees have been calculated to increase by an amount of 3% each year, beginning in 2025. This reflects an estimated 2% inflationary increase and 1% increased expenditures within the service area. The increases will reduce the pressure on property taxation as costs rise. The projected 3% increase in fiscal year 2025 is estimated to reduce taxation by approximately $10,500. So the proposed bylaw amendment states fee amounts shall increase each year by 3%, rounded to the nearest 10 cents. This would reduce the administrative burden of amending the bylaw each time the fee schedule is out of date, as the last time we amended this bylaw was in 2022, and we now have to come back today. Updated fees will be communicated through the annual business license renewal process. Staff's recommendation is that the District of Tofino business license regulation amendment bylaw number 1239.02 2024 be introduced and read a first, second, and third time. That's the presentation, ready for questions.
Super. Ms. Tech. Let's open it up for questions for clarity, and then perhaps we can have a round of questions for comments and if need be. So, questions for clarity, we'll let Councillor Smith.
Thank you, through the chair. I did have, I'll have comments later. I did have a question regarding, so that I understand the service that is provided for the business licensing fee. I wonder if you could describe that for me, so I have an understanding of some of the staff time that's involved and what is actually involved. They pay a fee, they must receive service. So I'm just curious as to what that is, because I don't know.
So I'll just speak a bit to it, and I'll let you pick up if you has anything else like that in the future. So for example, Anytime we receive a business license application, there's significant work that goes into ensuring that the business is compliant with zoning, has the appropriate occupancy, and going through just the various checks and balances to make sure that that business is operating in compliance with our various bylaws. There's also bylaw enforcement relating to business licensing, so that can be, that we have an issue with a business that is currently licensed, or we have businesses that are operating outside of a license. The District of Tofino also maintains, the license itself is the District of Tofino supporting our businesses in town by having a process that shows that we have vetted these businesses. And that's.
I guess to follow up on that, are there additional services the business receives in their renewal license? I know through many of our conversations about short-term rentals in particular, we learned that there was no follow-up inspection when they were renewing. So if a business renews their business license, we know with short-term rentals, which is a big chunk of some of our businesses, they are not getting any of those services that we are mentioning here. So should there be a reduction in fees for people that are renewing? Or is there a plan to increase the level of service for these businesses?
So through the chair, we do not do inspections each year for all businesses, but we can inspect businesses at any time. As part of, if there's any concern, if there's anything going possibly against our bylaws with a business. And another thing that I forgot to mention with the earlier question is of the additional services we have the software that we're currently introducing to process business licenses, which does come with the cost, not only in the implementation and the staff time to learn the new process, but we're hoping that will actually make the business licensing process easier on the end consumer. But at this time, it's the fee that is the discount is essentially a new business has to pay fees for a new business license application. And then going forward, you just have your annual business license fee for your business class.
In 2023, when the fees were increased by 20%, was that to accommodate the new software? Or I wasn't on council at the time, so I'm wondering what that significant jump was for.
Through the chair, if I may, this hadn't been increased since 2000, since the original bylaw, Home Say 858 was introduced. So those were more than 20 years out of date.
Yeah. Any comments? Or question, go ahead.
When we had presentations on bear safe many moons ago, and we talked at the table about whether we should support this by insisting that food service vendors incorporated bear safe practices to get a business license. Is that incorporated this year, and will we be inspecting that to support bear safe program?
So through the chair, that's not specifically incorporated into our business license regulation bylaw. However, we do have the wildlife attractant bylaw that we adopted earlier this year that does address, how businesses should be storing their waste. So no, not specifically that a business would have to prove that they're being bear safe compliant prior to receiving a business license, but we do have processes through other bylaws to enforce should we be having significant issues with business and
that strikes me as if you let someone do something wrong and then correct them rather than put them on the right track at the beginning. Which doesn't seem right to me, but. Just a comment.
Okay, let's go to a round of comments, or maybe I'll let you off the hook here, if that's all right. Yeah, you can sit down, so you're not doing the brunt of the discussion amongst council. Council. Go ahead and tell you what, let's start at the far end and then we'll work our way down. And let's try to keep it to the task at hand, which is the amendment to either increase the 3% in perpetuity for annual or not. I think that needs to keep it to that, otherwise it'll get the spiral of the sphere we're in right now. So go ahead, Councillor Sloan.
Yeah, I just thought after we've heard from the member of the public that that represents a large amount of businesses in Tofino, I feel like maybe we should possibly wait a little bit to have further discussion.
Okay, Councillor Thomas.
I can, with various, fee increases that we've looked at throughout my time in council, we've always had issues with, the phrase in perpetuity, because we know that it continues to compound and compound. So I take a big issue with that in this, as we have in some of our other fee structures that we've looked at. I could understand staff arguing for a 3% increase now, perhaps, if there was, services that they could say are being provided. I don't feel great about it, hearing the level of service that is provided and some of the gaps that might be there. And I can't support this with in perpetuity included.
I think my comment would be that, we didn't have a business license increase to even cover basic inflation for over 20 years, 22 years. And so basically what happens in that situation is that the taxpayers in the district pay more and more and more every year, and the businesses pay less. So in my mind, if 2% inflation is the Bank of Canada's benchmark, that's what they're going for, then we should at least do 2% in perpetuity, or we will go backwards. Because the relative value of money decreases, and the district still is on the hook for that. So that's my comments. I mean, 3% into perpetuity, that's a 1% increase essentially over the cost of inflation. I'm not averse to it, personally, but at the same time, I think that, maybe understanding exactly what that's going to cover and hearing about the, the new online, hopefully the online software or platform, whatever it is, it's going to help with business licensing renewal. I think that's a great idea, and that is going to cost money. So I do see those things happening. Of course, inflation goes beyond just your dollar. It also goes to the inflationary costs of staffing, beyond inflation every year. So I see the rationale. I do see the rationale. So maybe that's just my comment, and I'll just keep going. Councillor Master?
I can support a 3% rise for inflationary reasons. I think there's a member of the public would be upset if our property taxes went up, which I'm sure they will year after year, and business licenses didn't go up either. So I think we've got a lot of expensive costs, like the liquid waste management plan has come on board, and we're going to have issues with water. And I think business licenses have to face reality that as well, and it can be an expensive place to do business. So I will support 3%.
Councillor Steer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, my comment stems around some of the points that were brought up by a member of the public, Ms. Hackett. In terms of those inflationary costs and trying to understand, that's why I asked the question to around what is the service that they're receiving for that fee. So understanding a little bit more about what that is. I'm concerned about increased costs for businesses in small towns, especially with some of the fiscal realities of working in this town, as Councillor McMaster has pointed out. So I am concerned about that, and that is 3% compounded over time. So it does add up. So my concern is once again that perpetuity in terms of that 3%, and I also Was wondering, around the burden of reviewing that every 3 years and bringing that forward to council. And we can ask for that review at any time, of course, that's within our purview, and we certainly will do that through the financial planning process. So I am uncomfortable with perpetuity in terms of the increase. I would like to have further consultation, and I didn't know, I should have asked this question. I didn't know if this was a time-sensitive bylaw to be brought forward in terms of the financial planning process. So I neglected to ask that. It was in my notes to ask. Because if there is no immediacy to it, then I would like a little consultation with the business community. I think that would be an important contribution, as we have pointed out in our strategic planning process, to have that consultation process. Thank you. I can say what I know about Chair.
Through the chair, if I may. We do need to establish fees for the 2025 season because currently no fees are set for the renewal process, which will begin very soon, as soon as the fees are established, actually. I think the future is difficult to predict, but we do have a level of confidence in the next 3 years and what our costs will be. And by putting those onto the business license fee, we are able to offset the burden on taxation.
Thank you, and if I could just continue. So that was the other part of the conversation in terms of, and we went back, it's a conversation around where we looked at the, we did do a tax shift in terms of balancing between residential and property and commercial. And that was, I think, well thought out in the sense that some of the costs that were incurred by some of the businesses to the district were balanced out. And it was very prescriptive of how we did that. And so, and when we talk about a property tax increase to cover those costs, I think that adjustment has already been looked at. I don't know if that was incorporated in this particular piece. So that was something that had come to mind in terms of when we made that tax shift, for lack of a better description. So I am still uncomfortable with that increase of 1%, although I do recognize the increased costs to the district. I'm still not 100% clear on that. So I would be comfortable understanding that there's always an inflationary. Right now, I just looked it up before we came, there's 1.6%. Then the federal government's target is for a 2% increase. So I'd be comfortable with that 2%, but would have difficulties at this time with a 3%, and certainly would have difficulty with going in perpetuity. But I do recognize the need for expediency on this. So recognizing that, and I'm curious if, I guess if we knew that this was coming up, maybe if this going to come a little forward, so we would have had more consultation time in there, but I do recognize the expedience of it.
Welcome. Sorry, anybody else jumping in? My comment, I think I recall from financial planning or the financial planning process that the bylaw department still relies on taxation to meet its budget. So at the present time, my understanding is that fees do not cover the entire bylaw. But so I just want to remind everybody right now that property taxation is built into the cost of bylaw. Noting council's reluctance to do in perpetuity for 3 years, I personally think that noting that it hadn't risen for 22 years, and that was a relative cost, and even a 20% increase does not remotely cover the inflationary costs over that time. And so we still haven't actually met even inflation, the inflation increase over 22 years, 24 years. But I'd be happy to suggest we do a 3% increase for 3 years, and then find out what happens after that. Noting that we do have expediency, but that's just a comment from staff.
Thank you, Mayor Law and Council, for the discussion. I may just add a little bit of just financial information to this, because I think there's a lot of comments here about what this increase really means. And this is not a service level increase or a service level change. We are trying to keep up with the actual rising costs. And even though inflation recently came in at under 2%, that's not going to hit our reality for a number of years. I understand the discontent or maybe discomfort with doing 3% into perpetuity. what I can do is provide a little bit more information on the finances and talk about how revenues are reviewed on an annual basis through the financial planning process. I think that will bring some level of comfort to council with an opportunity for review at a future date and having a closer look at that into perpetuity clause, while being able to set fees for 2025. So the bylaw services budget is just over a $500,000 budget. So I'll just talk about 2024. It was approved at $546,000 with just under $200,000 coming from property taxation. The highest pressure in that service area is with respect to salaries and wages and employee expenses at just over $400,000. So not all of that enforcement cost relates back to business licensing but a portion of that does, and we do need to provide that cost of service. I can't talk about collective bargaining today in an open meeting, but I can, sort of safely project that we're not, we don't move at a pace of inflation when we are going through that process, and with a large majority of these being staffing expenses, we're expecting to have a reflection of the past going forward in our collective agreement, and that's the reality that we face every time we go into bargaining. So this is not a request to increase fees to increase service levels. This is to keep up with the rising costs. And it is certainly within council's purview to, push some of that cost pressure onto taxation versus fees and charges. But it has been my experience as the district's financial officer to always take a close look at fees and charges through the financial planning process to ensure that the burden isn't solely sitting with the taxpayer for services that we do provide. So this is acting responsibly in that manner. When we do set the revenues in financial planning or through the financial planning process, we work backwards and we establish what our operating pressures are for expenditures, and we ensure that the revenues can meet those expenditures. And if there's a significant change to the property taxation allotment for a service area, we have a look at whether fees need to be changed or not, and we go back to that fee and charge bylaw. That naturally happens in every service area through the financial planning process. We don't list out all the fees and charges bylaw and go through them individually. We look at it generally when we go backwards after establishing the operating expenditures for that service area. So if council were to approve an amendment to today's bylaw or receive the introduction first 3 readings, this wouldn't mean that those fees wouldn't be reviewed for that into perpetuity clause, going into the 2026 financial year, for example. We do need to set fees, and time is of the essence, and I do wish I came to council earlier so we could have the fulsome discussion that council is looking for today. But perhaps council may be interested in entertaining a second direction to staff, which is to have a look at the into perpetuity clause through the 2026 financial planning process and reconsider it before 2026 fees are established. That's certainly something we can do, although we do naturally do that through the financial planning process. So I hope that added some more information for financial context, and happy to answer any questions about that.
That's just here.
Yeah, just for clarity, thank you, Nala, that is very helpful, thank you. And just in the comment around when we look in that service area and specifically bylaw, and I think I understood that when you look at the service in general, it's hard, you look at a general sense, but do you then look at prescriptively what the costs are for delivering that business licensing service that we provide, or it's just that general picture, or you get that far into the weeds to say this is how much it costs to deliver that service, specifically business licensing in this?
Thank you for the question through the chair. We get into the weeds in all service areas, and so when we bring this to council, it's at a very detailed level, you receiving the line by line budget, but when we're talking about them, we talk about them in greater detail. And so we are looking at that cost of service and making sure that we're not sort of pressuring too high on fees versus pressuring too high on taxes. That is a contemplation we make, likely more so in the financial services department, but we are having that discussion with staff as well.
Yeah. And maybe just a comment for council, we were talking about, a one-time fee. And in some cases, it's less than $10. Increase a year, so. Just want to put things in perspective to the cost of doing business in Tofino and what it means not to have that increase. Is to shift that cost somewhere else, so. Council Thomas?
I'm still not on board with the in perpetuity. And I know that maybe in the grand scheme of things, this seems small, but we are already shifting things onto the tax base. We have already increased utilities fees. Our next item on the agenda is talking about additional fees that we're going to be putting on businesses. It's just, I do see the fact that it is compounding quite a bit. And I think just having in perpetuity makes it so we possibly won't bring it back forward unless somebody requests it. It's not something that will specifically come in front of us and be like, hey, we wanted to discuss this specific verbiage. And sometimes we get really down deep into the words. And it would be, if this is covering the service fees for the businesses, then we need to be able to see that. And if this is just covering bylaw in general, I don't think the onus should necessarily be on businesses to be paying business fees to say have beach fires monitored. So there is just some compromise there for where this money is going.
Question for staff. Can we make a recommendation now to increase fees for 2026 and then bring this back for discussion for in perpetuity clause, or would you like maybe clarify that option that you presented?
Thank you, Mayor Law. So it is October 22nd and time is of the essence to send out renewal notices to businesses. I know that's not ideal for decision making today. But if council is comfortable with 3% increase for 2025, my recommendation is to give the bylaw the readings today, potentially adopt, I guess, update council first meeting in November so we can get started on renewal. But look at a subsequent motion for staff to have a look at business license fees and reconsider the into perpetuity clause for before the 2026 season. And that commits us to that one before the 2026. Yep. It doesn't hold up.
It sounds like that's, it sounds like from me, that's kind of the direction council is going with this. So I'm just gonna look to council now and see how that lands.
That's well, that's well.
Councilman Master, okay, Mr. Thomas?
Yes, if we see it before the end of October next year, so we have time to some consultation, yeah.
Okay, I think we got a plan. I think we're all in agreement and we can go for that. I think the 3% increase is reasonable for 2025. Times of the essence, so let's do that now. So let's just look to Mr. McCall, perhaps, for a second part of this recommendation. So let me just look in here. Where are we? Okay, so I think we can do this. We can do that. The District of Tofino business license regulation and then the file number whatever be introduced, read it first, second, and third time, and that staff return.
Have it separate.
Have it separate?
Yes, the readings have to be.
Okay,
separate.
that's fine.
Apologies.
That's fine. Maybe okay, well, let's just do this one first. If everybody's okay with it. All right. All right, well then from the chair, and move the District of Tofino business license regulation and file number 1239.02 2024 be introduced and read first, second, and third time.
Second.
Anybody comes from a master. Any further comments? Seeing none, motion all in favor. Missing part of your hand. No, none opposed, motion is carried. Let's do a second recommendation. We have, I'll say, I'll move that staff return to council during the 2026 financial planning process to review the 3% in perpetuity clause for the business license regulation file or whatever. Does that work? Is that good enough, Mr. McCall?
Yes, got it.
Okay, then I've done it. Second by Councilor Master. Any further comments? All in favor? Excellent. Okay. Maybe we can bring the Chamber of Commerce into that conversation. Thank you. Thank you very much. Moving on, 10.4, we have source control regulation bylaw number 1350. Mr. Kirkland.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Today I'm going to be presenting the source control regulation bylaw number 1350. And it's going to be the first reading of this bylaw. It's a brand new bylaw for the District of Tofino. So some background on this bylaw. So it's a typical bylaw for municipalities and regional boards as well. Purpose of it is protect primarily sewage infrastructure in this case, prevent damage to sewer infrastructure such as pipes, pumps, treatment plants by reducing and restricting, in essence, controlling the types of substances that are introduced to the liquid waste for the influent flow to such treatment facilities. Environmental protections, so minimizing release of pollutants into receiving waters, which can, in Tofino's case, harm our marine ecosystem and environment. Public health, so helps ensure safe and efficient operation of the wastewater treatment plant, which will in turn help protect and public health. Compliance, so it helps provide grounds to enforce compliance with federal and provincial related wastewater discharge requirements, in our case, secondary effluent discharge requirements. And it'll help with reducing operational and maintenance costs throughout the service life of the wastewater treatment plant facility. We're planning to, this is going to be developed or is being developed and has been developed with engineering professionals, environmental professionals, and as we move forward in subsequent readings, we'd like to collaborate, staff would like to collaborate with community members. And this was also identified as a need in 2017 when the district undertook a liquid waste management plan. So discussion today, so first reading, so staff are proposing to issue the first reading of the bylaw. This was drafted kind of in review of relevant municipalities, source control regulation bylaws, other names for the bylaw, depending on the regional district or the municipal district. Tofino specific data informed the development of this bylaw, so we looked at the process technology at the actual wastewater treatment plant. We looked at some of the influent flow criteria that we have, used that in the development here. Right now, as I stated before, we're proposing to read this bylaw for a first time, which will allow for further public consultation or community engagement, which I'll get to on in one of the next slides. And there will also be some other operational documents, so some permit forms that we'd like to further develop. We have them in draft form now. Staff aren't sharing them at this time, as we'd like to allow that to go through the community engagement to prior to presenting to council in the event that there's optimizations to be made to those forms and permits and fees and all that sort of fun stuff. In terms of financial impacts, there's no significant impacts to the district in the development of this bylaw. There would be some revenue that could potentially be generated as a result of specific prohibited or restricted waste permits that would may be issued to the specific users of the sanitary system. But there was some staff time, some engineering consultant time, and some cursory legal review time. Staff are trying to do the majority of this bylaw in-house internally, trying to mitigate the external costs. And financial impact, so long-term operational cost optimization with the wastewater treatment plant. So the goal, one of the main goals through this, similar to our water conservation efforts, is to have success with this bylaw and capitalize on that success by educating and engaging with the community. Getting to community engagement, which I've spoken so much about already, so in the works is initiating a Talk Tofino page. To get some outreach through those channels to the community and other users of the system. Targeting on some consultation with industrial businesses, which may be more impacted than others. Consultation with the Tofino Long Beach Chamber of Commerce, which is an effective avenue to reach out to all of the businesses within the community. Following that, when we come for subsequent readings, staff would like to share the results of that engagement with council at that time. And I'll leave the recommendation on the screen here and open it up for questions and feedback. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Questions for clarity from council? Go ahead, Councilman Master and Councilman Spear.
Can you explain to me how this would work in a sense? You know, I'll pick on the brewery, for instance, the brewery would apply for a permit to discharge, whatever. Do we take the word for it? Does it get tested before it gets discharged into the system? And when does it get tested?
Yeah, great questions. I mean, to start with the proximity to the brewery, we already do notice when there is discharges after production at the brewery. Some things through the chair, I might add, some things we may look at doing while we work with businesses like that. There could be some sort of retention time that's required prior to that effluent being discharged into the system. Further engagement with the business, maybe there's some times where we can optimize when that is discharged into the system. With implementing this bylaw, there could be opportunity to install like monitoring inspection ports, similar to like what a clean out is, so we can actually pull samples of what the brewery effluent is, because it becomes the district's influent to the wastewater treatment plant, and then finding means to mitigate the impact of the wastewater plant. Right now, staff are seeing that we can see some spikes in pH when we have we call slugs coming down the pipeline from that specific user. So at the end of the day, we're able to manage where we are right now, but long term it is a strain on the operations of the plant. That answers the question.
Yeah, no, I was looking for if we're gonna have inspection boards, things like that. And my second question is, I didn't see a mention of talking to GFN in the engagement. Is that going to happen?
Through the chair, yeah, that's a very good point, and that wasn't listed on the PowerPoint, but that is 100% a part of what the community engagement will be.
Okay, that's all.
Thank you for addressing that.
Thank you through the chair. Thank you, Simon, and Councilor Master. That's the question, and we had chatted about earlier. And maybe a little more specific. I think you answered the question on the monitoring ports and the ability to do that. And the one question was, you gave a presentation earlier. There was a member of the public that expressed concerns around some of the discharge from the fish processing plants in terms of the PRV virus. And I'm wondering if do you get that prescriptive in terms of the what you would be monitoring for, which you might potentially be testing for, underneath the primary objectives of the, as you pointed out, the environmental protection. That's one of the guiding. And I'm just wondering if that is something that could be or is potentially going to be happening.
Great question through the chair. With respect to our municipal waste regulation, like our regulatory sampling requirements, the PRV is not something that we're required by the province to sample for. However, with the essence of that being a topic that is of interest to the community, and I believe as the fish processing plants are committed to kind of working with the district and finding ways that they can reduce their impact on the environment and stuff like that. Through the community engagement process, we would reach out, and I think there's opportunity where there could be additional samples that Perhaps those business owners could be taking and being required to share laboratory results with the district. Potentially that industry may be falling under the restricted waste category, which would require them to obtain a waste discharge permit. Under this bylaw.
Yeah,
That helps answer the
it
question.
does, and a follow-up, if I may, yeah, and that's what's the next one was on wastewater, the discharge permit, that would be required. Is there specific requirements, for, the permitting process from some of our, potential industrial users?
Through the chair, yes, there will be, and staff, like I didn't bring the draft permit, which we have started working on already, to the first reading here, but yeah, there are specific requirements set forth in that permit. And in the schedules that were shared in the draft reading, there's some definitions of what prohibited / restricted waste would be defined as, and we'd be engaging with those, like the industrial kind of users further to identify and do some further testing into what their effluent coming into our effluent would be. So we could categorize what their liquid waste would be.
Thank you.
That's the question.
Yeah, it is.
If this bylaw were to be enacted, do you have a timeline for people to come into compliance? Would it be, it's enacted, people are expected to be compliant right away? Because when you talk about potentially industry having to have holding tanks for things or alter their schedules of production, this could be significant costs, significant staffing issues. Yeah, just would this be, hey, this is enacted, now we're gonna start fining you for not being part of this, or will there be some time going into this?
Yeah, that's a great question, and again, not to hang my hat on the through the chair, hang my hat on the community engagement piece, but staff would want to, or the district staff would want to work collaboratively with the business community. I mean, there's fair and reasonable, right? Like if there's things that would change operations, they're gonna have to come, and we want to work with the business owners to set those goals. Essentially, once the third reading comes into place, is when this bylaw and these fees and everything associated with the bylaw would come into place. Again, with that collaborative mindset, we would pick a date or a line in the sand that would work as best as it could for both the district and the business owners. That helps to answer the question.
On adoption.
On the adoption of the, or after the subsequent third reading.
That answer?
Get that answers it. I'm really looking forward to the community engagement on this, but I have lots of things but not articulated yet, so.
Yeah.
I'd love to.
Great. Any other questions for clarity for Mr. Griffin? Any comments?
Maybe just a quick comment, and I think Councilor McMaster brought up, and you, I think you answered the question in terms of the community engagement, and I would be really curious to all the stakeholders. You identified the chamber, of course, as one, and I think TFN a critical one, of course, and I suspect there will be others, but thank you. It looked like a robust, I think you thought this one out well, so thank you for thoroughly engaging in the engagement plan process.
Thank you, Councilor Steer.
I geeked out about all the sulfates. Wondering if I poured a bottle of wine down, but I get fined. But anyway, moving on. Okay, so we have a recommendation for us. If there's no further comments or questions from council, would somebody like to read this?
Sure, I'll move that the District of Tofino Source Control Regulation Bylaw number 1350/2024 be introduced and read a first time.
Second.
Anybody else? Master, any further comments from council? Seeing none, all in favor? None opposed, motion carried. Thank you. 10.5 media policy amendments. Report, Mr. McCall.
Thank you, Mayor Law. One moment while I put it up on the screen.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Stephen McCall, Manager of Legislative Services for the District of Tofino. And tonight I have some media policy amendments for Council's consideration. So a bit of background on the media policy. The current policy was adopted in 2019 And this was backed by council's strategic plan at the time to improve communications and citizen engagement in local government decision making and service delivery. The policy was viewed in 2023 by staff and consultants, and changes were proposed to the policy during the committee of the whole in June of 2023. At that meeting, council discussed the role of spokesperson within the policy and the flexibility of the council members to share their own views. Council then directed staff to bring forward amendments based on that decision. So a reminder for council, for the purposes of the media policy, is to maintain high standards and consistency within the media policy, for a professional image in all business dealings, to protect the reputation and brand of the District of Tofino, to encourage strong relationships with the media, to be an accessible and helpful resource for all media, and to meet long and short-term communication goals. The scope of this media policy really surrounds council and staff acting as official spokespeople for the organization to deliver messages, including council decisions, district policy, projects and services. We'll note here that so council's personal reflections or views are separate from this policy. And I'll just read some language from this policy as it pertains to what isn't within the scope. So this differs from council media relations, which involve council members responding to the media from a personal perspective as an elected official. Council media relations include discussion, debate, and opinion being expressed by individual council members and are considered separate from this policy. So council has the complete authority to speak to members of the media with their own personal views, as long as that is clear that they're not speaking on behalf of the District of Tofino. So here we go. Discussion. A lot has changed since 2019 when this policy was adopted, including a new organizational structure for the District of Tofino, a new communications coordinator position, a new brand and website, staff using and engaging in more communication tools, including Tofino, and staff conducting more town halls, roundtables, engaging with the public. A few policy provisions to remain in the policy that won't be changed. That the acting mayor remains the official spokesperson for the District of Tofino. That the mayor and CAO are informed of all media requests, and that the CAO supports the mayor with background and representation. And then also that all messages and delegated spokespeople are approved by the CAO, mayor, and acting mayor. So new policy provisions that will be amended. We wanted to add the communications coordinator position within the policy. This communications coordinator is the primary contact for all media relations, responsible for issuing corrections, coordinating, preparing, distributing press releases as well. We wanted to also add the manager of legislative services to this policy to coordinate their staff member, which is the communications coordinator, and reducing some reliance on the CAO for administration and coordination duties. Staff also wanted to add the deputy fire chief to the policy to support the fire chief and to add provision of a emergency operations center director during activations. So next steps for council, the amendments are attached to your agenda packages tonight for your consideration. And as it is an internal policy of the District of Tofino, no further communication or public engagement is required apart from these two open meetings where council has considered these amendments. With that, I have a recommendation for council to consider and happy to answer any questions.
Excellent, thank you, Mr. McCall. I can open it up for questions for clarity, Mr. McCall from council. Seeing none, we can also open it up for comments. Seeing none, and I do recall our robust discussions around this, and I'm happy to see these amendments the way they are. So I'll support those, and seeing no other objections or interest from council in discussion further, let's read the recommendations. Somebody like to offer that?
Oh. I move that the amendments to the District of Tofino media policy as shown in appendix 1 to the staff report titled Media Policy Amendments dated October 22nd, 2024 be approved.
Second by Councilor Master, any other comments from council? Seeing none, all in favor? None opposed, which is carried, thank you. Okay, we're moving on to item 12, business initiated by council members. I believe we have a couple, so let's start out with the Tofino Housing Corporation, Councilor Master.
Yeah, I'd just like to announce for those that haven't heard, we've recruited past executive director Ian Scott to help us out on an interim basis while we look for a new executive director. So Ian signed a contract for 2 months. It started on Monday. We need help.
Excellent news, thank you. Councilor Steer?
Yeah, you
Councilor
could,
Swan.
you could convince them to stay longer. No.
We may.
I did ask the question.
I'm sure you did.
Super, Jim Tofino. Councilor Swan.
Yes, I attended the Tourism Tofino board meeting today. And today we approved the 2025 operating budget, and this will be presented to council in early November. At this meeting, we discussed the upcoming agenda for the board retreat, which is happening this Sunday at the Black Rock in Q, Sunday to Tuesday. We also reviewed the MOU between the Tourism Tofino, Tla-o-qui-aht First Nation, District of Tofino, and the Long Beach Chamber of Commerce. And there was a bit of concern regarding the signing authorities. There's some discussion about perhaps hereditary chief should be included on that document. And then also there was some discussion about the highway closure, which happened due to the Pineapple Express on Friday. The executive director of Tourism Tofino was stuck in the highway. He was the first vehicle in line, and he was a little bit shocked with the lack of communication on the ground there. So this really highlighted the lack of connectivity along the highway. And he has a meeting coming up with Modi, and he's going to be advocating for self-coverage along the route.
Councilor Steer.
And just further that I did speak with Brad afterwards, and at our, well, if you remember at UBC, oh no, I was just, so we met with Minister of Citizen Services, Ucluelet Council, and one of the conversations was on connectivity along that stretch of highway, and one of the potential recommendations with hotspot zones. And I know there has been conversation with the HCRD and with the municipality of Ucluelet around where that is, and the feedback on that at this point, because of the election, there has been no movement or conversation at this point. So it is out there, it's just not being acted on.
Councilor Thomas.
Point is brief. There was a notice of motions, I'll bring, something to that on the bill.
Great.
Yeah, if I may, Councillor Thomas, you may share in general terms with the no submission, maybe.
Wonderful. I was hoping, I wasn't sure what I was on.
History.
You know, yeah, I was hoping to have some discussions about the local resolution question for the ICC to definitely allow for this person.
Can throw on there. Question period. Mr. McCall.
Thank you, Mayor Law. I will now do an open call for members of the public and folks online for questions. If you would like to pose a question to council, you must state your name, the agenda item you're speaking to, and your address. I will now do a call going once, going twice, going 3 times. There are no questions from members of the public at this time. Mayor Law.
Super. Thank you very much, Mr. McCall. Would the councillor like to move us into the close with item 14.5?
That the meeting be closed to the public pursuant to sections 91 A, C, and L of the Community Charter to discuss matters relating to personal information about an individual who holds or is being considered for a position as an officer, employee, or agent. Employee relations, discussions with municipal officers and employees respecting municipal objectives, measures, and progress reports for the purposes of preparing an annual report under section 98 annual municipal report.
Second by Councillor Thomas, all in favor? Opposed, motion carried. We're gonna take a 5-minute recess while we move into